The City of Phoenix holds community budget hearings throughout April, allowing residents to comment and make suggestions on the city manager's trial budget before final decisions are made. This public discussion is among the reasons the city's budget so closely matches the community's highest priorities each fiscal year.
Good evening. It's great to see everybody here. My name's Ed Zerker. I'm the city manager, and it's my privilege to join you here in your house in Sunny Slope. We wanted just a couple of housekeeping things. I hope you've had an opportunity to pick up a budget pamphlet. It looks like this on the back. That has a lot of good information for you. So we're going to have a video which gives a really high level. This has more information, and the video talks about this. And then if you're really into it, you can go online to phoenix.gov/budget, and there's even more information for you. So it just depends on how much you want to get into. We'll get to the video in a second. First thing, though, I want to do is have our interpreter introduce herself.
Buenas tardes, me llamo Judy, soy intérprete de español. Si alguien necesita el equipo, está en la mesa de atrás. Gracias.
All right. If you want to speak, we already have about 25 people who've done so, but if you're here and you want to speak, we ask that you fill out a card so we can call your name and keep it in order. And with that, before we go to the video, I'd like to turn it over to our host, District Councilman, Councilman Bill Gates.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks to everyone for coming out to the Sunny Slope Senior Center. And before we go any further, I'd just like to recognize everybody here who does a wonderful job providing great services to our seniors. So if we can give a round of applause to all the members of the Senior Center. Thrilled to see this kind of a crowd out here for this budget hearing. You know, unlike other levels of government in Arizona, we don't do this process in the dark in the middle of the night. We do it out in the public, in the light, holding over many budget hearings like this. So we are here this evening to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts on this trial budget. This is just the beginning of the process. This is a budget that Ed Zerker, our city manager, has put together for your feedback, and then from your feedback we are listening, and the final product that we will approve as a council will be different than that trial budget, and it will be different because of your input. So thank you for coming out this evening. Really appreciate it, and I'm very proud and pleased to be joined by my colleague, my neighbor from over in District 5, Councilman Daniel Valenzuela.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much, Bill. So we have so many city employees here, and Bill has already done this, but I want to do this again. If you're a city employee with the City of Phoenix, will you please raise your hand or stand so that we can acknowledge you, and thank you for all the hard work. We really appreciate you being here tonight. I know many city employees are here, and they're not on duty. They're here because, like everyone else here, they care about this process. They care about our city. As Bill mentioned, this is just the trial budget, and this is a little bit different. This is a very complex budget. Our city manager, who I think is doing a great job, has put together a couple of different trial budgets. It gives us a chance to weigh in. The budget that will be adopted in a few weeks is going to be a bit different. I've said it a million times. Here in the City of Phoenix, we don't believe that the public process and public input is not a box that simply gets checked. We govern based on public input. And if you see how things have happened over the last several years and budgets that have been adopted, they're always different than what the trial budget was initially. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for advocating on behalf of your family, your neighbors, our city. One more thing I would just like to do, because she deserves a great deal of credit for all the effort in our office, but Mallory Hutchison is around here someplace, my chief of staff. Will you please indulge me and give her a round of applause? Thank you, Mallory. And lastly, I want to, because I said how I would start doing this, I'm rather paperless. I try to be. It's just in my own way. It's how I could be the most efficient. I use my phone for taking notes, so please don't think I'm playing Tetris, okay? We're definitely paying attention, and I know how it can be confused, and I don't want you to ever feel like that's not the case at all. So again, thank you for being here. God bless you, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Zerker.
All right, thank you, council members. Let's give them a hand for their service. And thank you for recognizing our city employees. They do work hard for you. I would just also recognize before we start, a former councilman for District 4, which used to have Sunny Slope, Councilman Craig Tripkin. Former Councilman Tripkin is here. Many of you remember Craig. So, as was mentioned, the trial budget is designed to get your input and your feedback for you to respond to it. And it's laid out here. As the councilman said, this is a very complex budget this year because there are three things happening. We're going to explain that in the video. We have to pay debt service for buildings like this. And we do that through a part of the property tax. And for 21 years, the city has kept the property tax rate at $1.82. It's never changed for 21 years. We're now coming to a point where we have to decide what we're going to do with our property tax to either raise it or do some other things. That'll be explained, and it's explained in this book. The other thing that's happening is a budget for a $3 billion corporation is very complicated, as you can imagine, and that's what the city of Phoenix is. It's a $3 billion company. And then the third thing is we are currently negotiating labor contracts with our employees. We have 5 unions and 2 associations, and we're negotiating with them to determine how much in wages and other benefits we are able to afford for that, and that's explained in here too. In this book, on page 5, I think I got the right page, is a chart that talks about some of these options. And then on pages 6, 7, 8, and 9, there's more discussion. Now, the reason I want to talk about this a second, because I've seen in some of the cards, there's some questions. The city manager's trial budget is option number 1 on page 6. And it is assuming that we will increase property taxes by about $4.25 on a typical home per month, about $51 a year. So, you know, you may want to comment on that. And as a result, we're able to do the other things that are listed on page 6, which includes keeping all of our services open, some money for employee compensation restorations, and doing a few new things. They'll be explained. But if people don't want to do that, if raising property taxes isn't acceptable, there are options on the other pages that we could do differently. And one of those options is the last one, which has a series of cuts proposed to go with it. So if we didn't want to do option 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, there's an option 5, which says we would cut services, and there are some services like senior programs and parks in there. I know many of you are here to comment on that. I just wanted to be clear, the trial budget itself is not saying that we're going to do that. That is simply an option if this trial budget is not what people want to do. And that's the kind of feedback we want to hear this evening. So that's why it's complicated, because in times past, we've just presented one thing and said, what do you think? This says, here's one thing, but here's 4 other things you might do if that one thing doesn't work for you. So I want to just take a second to explain that. Hopefully the video will do a better job and help with that as well. But then we're here afterwards to take your comments and questions. Again, please fill out a card. If you're standing in the back, there are seats up front. The council members and I do not bite. This isn't church. We will fill the front pew up. So we invite you to come up and have a seat. There's a couple there and some seats here. So if you're standing and you don't want to, we've got an open one here. People are offering them. Please feel free to come forward. So with that, we're going to go to the video. It's about 15 minutes, and then we'll take your comments and questions and move from there. So thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your first look at the City of Phoenix 2016-17 City Manager's Trial Budget.
Input from our residents is very important, as your ideas can help shape what will end up being the final budget for the next fiscal year.
The final budget is important because it provides the plan for how the city will spend taxpayer money and how services that you depend on could be impacted.
I think the city manager's trial budget provides a great pathway for us to continue providing the outstanding services that Phoenix residents expect, and it gives employees the opportunity to continue to provide that great service every day.
Why is a balanced budget important? It's required by state law and city charter. In this trial budget, there is a $60 million surplus that can be used to improve essential services that will benefit the community. Examples include public safety needs, employee compensation, and restoration of some programs and services. So how does the funding work? Funding for the city budget comes from three sources: the general fund, enterprise funds, and special revenue funds. Examples of general fund city departments include police, fire, the library, parks and recreation, and streets. Enterprise fund departments include aviation, water services, solid waste services, and the convention center. Special revenue funds account for designated sources of money for a specific purpose, like sales tax dollars for the hiring of police officers and firefighters, and funds for public transit.
So how did we get here? Under the leadership of the mayor and city council, we are glad to say the budget is balanced.
The mayor and city council have really set the tone and direction for our city staff and employees to be focused on innovation and efficiency.
Here's just some of the ways that happened. First, eliminating 119 vacant positions and other administrative savings actions that will result in an overall savings of just over $11 million. Second, there is a one-time carryover of $25 million from last year's surplus. Also, the city is saving by making needed adjustments to the Workers' Compensation Fund and has sold extra police helicopters that were too expensive to maintain. Did you know that Phoenix has reduced administrative expenses and has the smallest number of employees per capita in over 40 years? And while still providing great services, the city has reduced authorized staffing levels by more than 2,700 positions. That is 16% since 2007. Also, city staff is constantly finding innovative ways to save money. Did you know that since 2010, we have saved $106 million in taxpayer funding? Some examples. The municipal court. It saved almost $600,000 by eliminating a criminal courtroom and a civil courtroom due to lower court volume. Plus, a new process with copy services. By reducing the number of printers and copiers citywide and securing more competitive rates with copy contracts, the city should save hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. Now to rising pension costs, which continue to be an important issue. Thanks to the leadership of the mayor and city council and actions taken by voters, the savings from reform efforts will reach $1.1 billion over a 23-year period. And what a difference a year makes. Last year's 5-year forecast projected a deficit of up to $58 million. But with guidance from the mayor and council and the efficient work of city staff, that deficit was eliminated without reducing services to the community.
Mayor and council also expect us to provide great service, and that's what the city employees work to do every day.
One of the biggest challenges the city faces has to do with how the city will continue to make its debt payments for voter-approved capital projects.
We're at a place where we need to make tough choices, like any of us during the recession, where you may have lost a job or your wife may have lost their job and your income changed and your bill stayed the same. So the city of Phoenix is at that point now. Several
Options will be discussed, including increasing Phoenix's combined property tax rate. Phoenix has had the same rate for 20 years. That means since 1995, residents have paid $1.82 per $100 of assessed value for property tax. The rate has gone unchanged while the city's population grew and important services developed, like new fire stations, parks, and libraries. The city has been using a reserved fund to help pay off that debt. This has relieved homeowners from increases in property tax rates, especially during the recession.
What other cities in the valley, after the recession, they started to, when their assessed valuation changed, the values of their properties changed, they started to float their rate up and down so that they levied the same amount of money, brought in the same amount of income. what the city of Phoenix did, we thought that we would give our taxpayers relief. So we kept the rate at $1.82.
In the meantime, the city had debt to pay, so a reserve fund was used. This relieved homeowners from increases in property tax rates, especially during the recession. But now that well of backup money is finally running dry, and the city needs to raise an additional $37 million to pay the debt service. Otherwise, Phoenix's strong credit rating could take a hit.
We are taking in less money, and now we still have the same payments. Our payment on our mortgage is essentially our debt service. That's what we have to continue making. At the same time, we have other sources or other services that we provide. Those costs have also increased, and our ability to make those payments has gotten tougher and tougher.
The budget lays out 5 ways to solve this. A detailed explanation of these options are in the trial budget summary booklet, handed out at all public meetings and online at phoenix.gov/budget. Option number 1, increase the combined property tax rate by 35 cents to $2.17. This would equal an additional $4.25 per month on an average single-family home, about 14 cents a day. Even at this rate, the average single-family homeowner will still be paying less than they did back in 2009.
We could continue to provide services, infrastructure, pay our debt at the lowest, cheapest possible cost, and maintain a very strong bond rating and provide our citizens with good services for many years to come.
Option number 2, generate $37 million in other ways by increasing a local sales tax, a food tax, or perhaps an addition to your city services bill. Option number 3, use all of the $60 million surplus to provide property tax relief for 2 years. That means no money would be available to restore employee concessions or add community services, including those cut in previous years. Now keep in mind, with this option, the city would still need to find a solution to this problem in 2 years, and this could hurt the city's strong credit rating. Option number 4, use some of the surplus money to provide tax relief for 1 more year, along with some of our reserve funds. But the issue will have to be addressed again next year. Now, with this option, the city could approve some proposed services, but not all. And this option could hurt the city's strong credit rating.
Some of these other options are short-term, which means they're only going to provide a solution for 1 year, maybe 2 years. And it really is just kicking the can down the road, and we will be back in this situation in a couple of years asking for a solution from our citizens.
Option number 5, cut $37 million from the general fund by making significant cuts that would directly affect the city's ability to serve residents and business owners. The city manager has outlined $44 million in services from which to choose. This includes cutting $14 million from the police department, $10 million from the fire department, more than $2 million in library services, and $6 million from the city's parks and recreation department. In a service business like the city, dollars translate into the people who provide the services, like 911 response, recreation programs, senior and youth services, and more.
Since 2010, we've been drawing down our fund balance reserve for our GO bonds, and we're at the end of that. So this is the last year that we can use that reserve to pay our debt service.
How will the city tackle this debt service situation for the long term? The plan is to refund and restructure bonds as long as rates remain where they are now. Until then, one of the mentioned 5 options must happen in order to pay the city's debt service for the facilities we've built. This is critical in order to keep the city's strong credit rating, which lets the city borrow money at a low interest rate to fund projects that are important to you. A look at these 5 options are on page 5 of your trial budget summary booklet.
Here's a look at the new services proposed in the trial budget. Many residents feel that protecting the public should be the city's top priority. The mayor and council agree it's critically important to keep everyone safe. That's why public safety and criminal justice amounts to 72% of the general fund in this trial budget. The new budget adds $2.4 million for the first year of a 3-year, $11 million plan for Phoenix police officers to start using body cameras.
Well, body cameras mean a lot of things. Safety is one of them, transparency is one of them, trust is another thing. For our residents, it allows them to have greater confidence in their police department.
The budget would also allow the department to hire a director of employee assistance and wellness.
Our employees are our most valuable asset. We need to make sure we take care of our employees. By hiring this position, it allows us to do that.
Now to the fire department. The budget would spend $2.8 million in one-time costs to replace the obsolete Emergency Transportation Billing System, known as EPCR.
We are the last large city in the state of Arizona to move forward with EPCR.
Electronic records will let our paramedics spend more time on patient care and less time on paperwork, and make payments from insurance carriers more efficient.
The latest technology for us to do our jobs more efficiently, protect the information of the community, bill efficiently so the taxpayers are getting revenue back into the pockets in order to provide services to the city of Phoenix.
The budget also calls for spending $1 million to begin rebuilding the road to North Mountain, along with fixing the radio tower to make it meet industry standards. The radio tower is critical to the city's public safety radio system. Now, to dedicated public safety special revenue funds. Because these funds will be balanced next year, the budget includes the hiring of 130 police officers in 2016-2017.
Other than 2015, we hadn't hired any police officers for almost 6 years.
The council also approved a plan to hire 36 firefighters next fiscal year.
We have been fortunate over the last couple of years to be able to hire minimal amounts of firefighters. This will allow us to fill all of our vacancies.
Now, let's look at dedicated Phoenix Parks and Preserves initiative funds. Money would be used to maintain new dog parks, recreation centers, and playing fields. From the Development Services Fund, which is paid for by building permit and inspection fees, is this proposal. The city is seeing a huge spike in construction, which is great news. To keep up with demand, the budget calls for adding 8 new positions to meet the needs of all the growth. Out of the Solid Waste Special Enterprise Funds, the trial budget calls for adding 15 positions and equipment needed to support curbside green organics, diversion, and illegal dumping programs. This will ensure that Phoenix continues to be a national leader in keeping waste out of city landfills. The budget calls for a few additions that directly will help the members of our community. They include new funding to support the city's continued effort to get veterans off the streets and back on their feet.
So the proposed funding will support peer navigators who help veterans living on the street make all the connections they need to make to get into housing and stay housed.
And money to add staff and supplies for after-school programs for disengaged youth.
This funding would really allow us to increase our programming by offering STEM programs, physical activities, as well as interaction between the youth and adults in many of our city parks.
Looking ahead, one of the biggest challenges to the general fund continues to be the cost of employee pensions. The trial budget reflects an increase of $15 million in civilian employee pension costs. But since the mayor and city council took action on pension reform and the voters made their voices heard, these short-term increases will slow over time with a savings of more than $1 billion over the next 2 decades. Now to the police and fire pensions, which will go up $21 million. This is the result of a state Supreme Court decision. Increases in future years are partly because of other pending court challenges and system funding issues. Also, proposed reforms could help reduce how much the city will pay in the future. Then there's employee compensation. For 6 years, city employees have been part of the shared solution of our budget issues, agreeing to almost 6% in cuts to compensation. 4.2% of that is still in effect. The trial budget proposes to responsibly restore some of it, 2.6%, or $44 million, over the next 2 years. This is an investment in our most valuable resource, the workers. As a service business, the city depends on good workers to provide outstanding services. Keep in mind, the budget hasn't been adopted just yet. Your input is important, and the City of Phoenix wants to hear from you on what the upcoming budget should look like.
The budget is really for the people of Phoenix, and so for it to be the best budget possible, it needs to reflect what people have to tell us, and that's why we're out to listen to the residents in the trial budget.
In summary, the trial budget has several options, including solving the debt service issue by raising the combined property tax by 35 cents to $2.17. This would allow the city to use surplus money to add critical services to our police, fire, and other city departments. It would also allow the city to restore some concessions made by city workers 6 years ago.
15 public hearings will take place this month across all council districts, and you are encouraged to attend. Make sure you pick up a budget pamphlet outlining all the proposals and options at any of the public meetings or online at phoenix.gov/budget. You can also send your comments or questions to budget.research@phoenix.gov, or to reach us by phone, call 602-262-4800. You can also comment on social media by using #PhoenixBudget. Thank you for attending this budget hearing and being part of a very important process. The City of Phoenix is committed to its mission of improving the quality of life in Phoenix through the efficient delivery of outstanding public services.
All right, thank you for your attention to that. We'd now like to go to the cards. When you speak, we'll ask you to come forward and speak into the microphone. I know that some people don't like to do that, but the reason to do that is so everybody can hear, but also because we're recording this for Channel 11, and then it's also available on our YouTube channel so other people can see it. In addition, we're taking minutes, and those minutes get distributed to all the council members so council members can see what people are saying in other districts. We have another hearing tonight down in Ahwatukee, and so it's not possible for everybody to be at every hearing. So it allows people to know what's going on in other districts. We'll also ask you to keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes to be respectful of the time of others. We have about 40 cards, so if everybody takes 3 minutes, that's 2 hours. So, right? So that's a lot of time, but we're here to listen. But we'd ask you to be respectful of the time of others as you come and speak. So if we're ready, we'll get right to it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Zerker. We will be timing. The first card is from Walter Rawlings, and Walter says on whether or not he wants to speak, he says it depends. You don't want to? Do you want me to just read your comment? That'd be great. Highest tax out of all. U.S. is the highest U.S. tax. Why can't we keep Senior Center open with current resources? I'm a member of Sunny Slope Senior Center. Thank you for coming out this evening. Next is Scott Fensler, and I'm gonna give out a, come on down, please, sir, and then I'll give a couple names so others can come down here up front so they'll be ready to move on when Mr. Fensler is done. Jennifer Wozniak will be next. Go ahead, Mr. Fensler.
Hi.
And just so you know, I'm not playing Tetris either. I'm running the stopwatch. Please.
Hi, my name is Scott Fensler. I've lived in the neighborhood since 1954. I went to school at Most Holy Trinity right down the street here, so you could say that this is my neighborhood. There was a lady at the meeting here in 2014, and I'm going to quote her. She said, why do we always have to cut services for our most vulnerable people? The kids, the old folks, and the veterans. It never, ever fails, always. You know, the demographics of Phoenix are changing. More and more people are coming from other places, and more of these folks are older. Rather than closing or reducing services, you're going to have to expand them. I mean, there's not going to be any choice. By 2050, and I'm not going to be here to see this, but I'll quote the Arizona Republican, they say there is more people over 65 than there's going to be under 15. So rather than closing the center, we've got to expand it. We've got to find a way to take care of our people. These folks, a lot of them, they live in this neighborhood. If you close the center, there's nowhere for them to go. They just can't get on a bus and go somewhere else. I mean, this is it for them. They have no transportation. They have nowhere to go. So please, do not close the center. Find the money somewhere else. Not our most vulnerable people. Not the old folks, not the kids, and not the veterans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next is Jennifer Wozniak, and then after Jennifer is Brandon Glenn, if Mr. Glenn could come on down.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Wozniak, and I represent Unit 1 employees that work for the City of Phoenix. I represent the people that pick up your garbage that actually work in this community center. So we are part of the Parks Department, we're part of the Streets Department, we're the motor room operators, the folks that fix the potholes. Since 2010, and I have some notes, but normally read them very well off of here. We've taken a 4.2, almost 6% cut, as you saw in the video. What does that mean for the people that I represent? That means they may make $12.96 an hour. That from the study we got from the city, it means that 40% of the people we represent may be eligible for food stamps. We're just asking for that money back. Like the Phoenix Unified School Board has said this week, they're working towards a livable wage. We're just asking for that same thing for the people that we represent that work outside in the streets with the tar to pick up the garbage, that works in the parks, that help make this community center so great for the disenfranchised youth and the seniors like yourselves that come here to enjoy the center. And this is a great thing that I hope someday I'm able to use as well when I'm a senior, and that's what we're asking for today. We've had a neutral who actually said it's his conclusion that Unit 1 employees are underpaid and that the management proposal is too little. We'd like to see our full concessions back in the next 3 years, and that is our ask, so that we can be here to help support the community and to help keep these centers alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brandon Glenn and then Richard Ray.
Hello, my name is Brandon Glenn. I'm a firefighter for the City of Phoenix, as well as I'm raising a family, and I'm a resident of the City of Phoenix. I'm here today to basically ask for the 4.2 restoration and pay. The City of Phoenix right now has a record revenue, and the sacrifices we made as employees for the City of Phoenix has been for the taxpayers, everybody sitting out here today. I'm not up here asking for a raise. I'm just asking for the 4.2% given back to us as promised by the city leaders over the last 6 years. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. Next is Richard Ray, and after him is Lewis Howley.
Well, this is sort of an interesting meeting because before our esteemed gentleman rides off into the sunset, we are going to ask him to at least work to get something that should have been done probably a couple of 3 years ago done now. We've had financial issues within the city of Phoenix for the last 6 years. We were facing a $277 million shortfall. We're now back up to where we're talking about having ability to put some reserves in, but we need to do it to raise taxes on the real estate. We cannot continue to avoid what's needed in the city of Phoenix. You all drove here tonight. Most of you probably noticed the streets weren't quite what you'd hoped them to be. I'm guessing. Almost everything, not almost, everything that you saw that is a representation of what the city of Phoenix provides is something that somebody asked for. A citizen wanted, and it was done for the citizens. And the city hired people to do the work. At one time, we had 18,000 people. We're now down to 14 something. That's 4,000 fewer people, and yet they're still doing as much or more than they did before. So it's critically important that the monies be brought back. The employees, and I'm not doing it so my car doesn't get trashed, the employees need to get brought back into what they had given up. They need to be brought back into parity. But that's not the only thing. There are other things that need to be done. Ed works incredibly hard. He has an incredibly hardworking staff that does everything they can to make it as efficient and innovative as possible. And I can speak a little bit to that, and I know that Mr. Gates knows about that. But the point is, the city and the city workers have done more with less for long enough. It's now time for the citizens to get behind, to approve a tax rate, get the employees back to where they need to be, and also keep in mind that many of the expenses that people talk about that it irritates them, they seem to be thinking that it's local. Local is not the federal government. Local is not a $10 million a wrench. The federal government is a different issue than here. Here is where we take care of the citizens. And the citizens, I think, and in every one of these hearings I've been to, have seemed to express the same thing. We want to pay, we're prepared to pay for the events and the services that we get, but we want to do it the right way. And we want to bring the employees back, we want the services brought back, and we want to do it the right way instead of taking away the things that, and where we would be forced to do, move back into a decline and removal of services. Because these services, every single one of them, satisfies the needs of some citizen. So
Miss-
please, well, let's go for the first project, which Ed put forth, and let's hope we get it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Ray, and thank you for your service on our Innovation and Efficiency Task Force. Next is Lewis Howley, and then we have Kathleen Sullivan as a maybe, so she can decide whether she wants to come on down.
Hi, my name is Lewis Howley, and I'm the president of the Acacia Library chapter of the Friends of the Phoenix Public Library. And our Friends group donated $6,100 to the library to help with programming last year. And, well, thank you. And I want to thank both these council people for their support of libraries in the past. And I was here to speak tonight on item number 6 under library and attachment 5, and you won't see a number 6 in your brochure. It's there on the trial budget on the website. But I've received some good news that apparently I was told by library staff this evening that it is a misprint. But let me read you what it said. It said, eliminate 1 day of service at 6 branches, reducing hours of operation from 40 to 32 hours per week. All programming at these branches would be eliminated, all programming, including story time, STEM, and computer classes, impacting approximately 1,800 customers per week. Kids Cafe at Acacia Branch, a food bank program serving up to 25 meals per day, would also be closed. And now I am informed that only some programming would be eliminated, which I think is certainly a great victory for our library. We're a small library. We have 6,600 square feet. We have a small collection. We generate small statistics. So we tend to be a target whenever there are budget cuts. We serve a diverse community. We have many lower income workers who live here or lower income retirees. They often do not have a vehicle to travel to a larger library to attend programming should we lose our programming. And they also may not have the disposable income to spend on alternative programming if our free programming were to go away. And so I'm very gratified to hear that we will receive a proportionate cut of programming instead of a complete cut. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did Ms. Sullivan want to speak?
Yes.
And then next will be Sharon Weigel.
I'm going to keep one eye on him because he's got the clock, and I'm Irish and I can talk a lot. I'm Kathleen Sullivan. I work for the library, but I'm not here as a library employee tonight. I'm here as a citizen who really when I came to work for the city, one thing I loved was the fiscal responsibility of the city and the way it steps up when they know we have troubles and they don't fool around with it. I was laid off with Proposition 13 in California. Being laid off is no fun. And many libraries were really badly impacted by that movement. I've never seen anything like that in Phoenix. Phoenix handles its people and its finances well. And I think it's ridiculous that we haven't increased our property taxes over 20 years. I was like, say what? You know, if that's what it takes, if 35 cents per $100 is going to save the services of Phoenix and give us a quality of life as a citizen of Phoenix, not just an employee, that is what I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Sharon Weigel, and then after that, we'll have Deborah Rosenberg, please.
My name is Sharon Weigel. I'm new to this center. I've only been here 1 year. And what I've noticed is that the elderly here really need the companionship of one another. They are of a poorer population. Some of them walk here because they can't even afford the $1 cab ride here and back. And they walk in the gym, and they've gotten stronger. And one thing I want to mention is Chinese Center implements the food stamp program, And I'm thinking, why can't we, because it would bring more money into the centers, and these elderly, they do a lot to make money for the center. We've had rummage sales, we do volunteer programs, recyclables, we bring in that to make money, but I know all these programs are important, but I just hope they keep the centers open. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And by the way, kudos to everyone on the new Sunny Slope Senior Center shirts tonight. They're awesome. Well, you'll tell us where you can buy some later, right? All right. Deborah Rosenberg, and then after that we'll have Carrie Maver.
Okay, I'm Deborah Rosenberg. I'm here as the city employee and the senior center assistant here at Sunny Slope Senior Center. I would really like to have my concessions back. I have worked for the city for 16 years. Out of those 16 years, the last 7, I have not had an increase in salary, and the last 6, I've had to give back part of my salary. So I am slowly becoming the working poor because of the city. And I would like to have the concessions back. I also would like the city to support the senior centers. As you can see, if all my seniors would stand up and make their presence known. This is the backbone of our center. This is their livelihood. This is where they come for socialization. And it would be hurting a lot of these people not to have this place open.
Thank you very much. Next is Carrie Maver, and then after that we'll have Benjamin Spano, please.
I'm very fortunate to live just across the street where the picket fence is, and I lived there for a year, and people kept saying, why don't you come to the center and try it? So I did, and the second day I was here, I like to write poetry. Bear with me, just one quick little poem, but it encapsulated what's happening here at the Sunny Slope Community Center. Excuse me. I was sitting at home talking to myself, feeling like a relic on a forgotten shelf, trying to get by each day, hoping I could cope, when I was invited to the community center here called Sunny Slope. I took a shower, combed my hair, and thought I'd take a chance. I found a place full of fun and laughter where seniors like to dance. The staff was warm and friendly, and I felt right at ease. There was singing, games, and bingo, lots of stuff to please. The food was good, the coffee strong. I found a place where I belonged. I'm so thankful I now have hope at the community center called Sunny Slope. We are more than just numbers and statistics here. We're a very vibrant community. And even more than that, we're a very large, close-knit family. And we spend days, weeks, months, and years together growing close to each other. And for many of us, this community center family is the only family that we have, and I'm speaking for myself. This is the only family that I have. So please keep the Sunny Slope Community Center open and our family together. Thank you.
Great job. Maybe I'll get a copy of that, put it on my Facebook page. Next, Benjamin Spano, and then after that, we'll have Sharon Robertson, please.
Thank you, Carrie, for that. That was great. I appreciate that, too. I'm Benjamin Spano. I've been coming to the Sunny Slope Center here since it opened, both me and my brother. And I really appreciate this place. I mean, the people, the friends, there's a multitude of them. And I hope I touched your lives as you have touched mine. And our director, Daniel, has done a great job, and I appreciate him very much. And Deborah, too. I've seen a lot of things happen here. I've missed a lot of people that's passed. But it's done a great change, being able to socialize better with people here. And it's close here for seniors like me and Mike. We get around in our chair, and that's the only way we get around, so I'd hate to lose this place, and because it's convenient for us. And I appreciate all the volunteers I've been able to do here. I'm an art teacher, and I volunteer my art and time skills to share with others, and others learn to appreciate art as well. And I appreciate doing that for this center. And for safety for the streets of the Phoenix area all over, but also in Sunny Slope, especially like when it's dark, you know. If they improve the city lights and make them brighter, I mean, there's, right here in Sunny Slope, there's so many dark streets you can't hardly see. And I've even accidentally went off of one of the sidewalks, not knowing, I thought it was a down thing, and it wasn't there. It was just, you know, and handicapped people like myself can get hurt if the city would improve their lights. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. I appreciate the comment on the lighting. Obviously, accessibility is very important to all of us on the council, and we're actually going through a process right now to replace our lights with new LED lights. So it's something that we're working on. Thank you very much. Next is Sharon Robertson, and then after that is Jack Charters.
Can you hear me? Good. I'm Sharon Robertson. I wasn't expecting to speak tonight, but I thought if I don't say something, then what I need to say might not get said by someone else. So let me take a breath, and I made some notes. And as I said on the card that I filled out before, besides the nutritious meals, there is a social and cultural network that naturally occurs at places such as these centers. I'm sure that many friendships have formed with people who have been coming here for years. I met a man here at lunch last week who said 10 years ago he was offered a cup of coffee and then was asked to help move some tables, and he's been helping here ever since. So through him, I now know where to recycle my egg cartons. He needs them for the food bank where he volunteers that gets eggs in cases of 30 dozen eggs. So the need for that one little item is high. I think that is one of the main reasons people need to make connections and contributions, small or large. For instance, how many people here tonight would be willing to save and donate their used egg cartons to Bob? See? And I think Bob might be here. He is. So he can take a bow. And you could probably bring him here. Thank you very much for that response. See how easy it is to get folks involved when they see a need where they can easily solve small or big problems. I think without a place that is convenient, such as this community centers, or community centers such as these, that offer a huge variety of activities and resources for all ages. And don't forget the other building outside to the east. That's a fitness center. And there is an after-school youth program there that also serves healthy meals and snacks to kids. And one more thing about the lunches. There are two choices. And did I mention the low cost of $2.50? And if you're really interested, here is April's menu, ta-da. And they are out there on a kiosk out front. And back to the fitness center. It has a basketball court, a weight room, a pool table, and separate rooms for yoga and other exercise programs or workshops. Where will all the kids go after school, if not a safe place like that? And where will people exercise without the fitness center? The city staff from this center has impressed me since I've been coming here, and it's not that long, only a year or so. They are professional and apparently care about the center besides needing and liking their jobs. That's important, and it shows in how they treat people and what will happen to them if this center isn't here. I think this center serves many people who do not have other support systems outside of this place. People without cars or people who don't drive for health or age problems. Some of our members...
Ms. Roberts, you've gone to 3 minutes, so if you could wrap up, please.
I am. Some of our members live across the street, and many within walking distance. Where will they go for lunch, company, computers, movies, etc.? The interface with the youth during the spring school break was amazing. Old people and young people having fun with games. If you want to know what happens here, just look around the room. The art, the photo board of field trips we went to so many places, so much. Tomorrow, there's an ice show. And then don't forget the bingo games. Well, the April events are also out there on a blue sheet, and you can pick those up. And the T-shirts are available at the desk, but probably not tonight, and they're only $8.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our next speaker was going to be Jack Charters. Unfortunately, he had to leave, but let's all thank him for his service in World War II in the South Pacific. So thank you, Mr. Charters. And then our next two speakers will have Michael Spano, and then after that, we'll have Reverend Cleo Lewis, please. Mr. Spano.
My name is Michael, and I'm a member of the Sunny Slope Senior Center. But my main concern is about our crosswalks. We've had too many people killed this year in our crosswalks. People not watching when somebody is in an intersection. I mean, we need to do something about our intersections. I mean, in broad daylight, a young boy was killed on his bicycle crossing the street. I mean, it's a terrible thing. I mean, a lady killed in a wheelchair. I mean, just crossing the street. I mean, people do not watch because in our chairs it takes time to cross a street. You know, and sometimes the light changes so fast that you're halfway through and the cars start moving. You know, I was hit a couple times, but you know, it's terrible. You know, I don't know if it's at night or what, but our crosswalks, like the one up the street here at Cave Creek and Sherrill. I mean, I go by across the street every day, and the cars do not stop. They do not slow down. So something needs to be done. And the senior center, I would like to see it stay open because I come here every single day, 6 o'clock. I mean, I leave at my house at 6 o'clock, and I'm here at 8 o'clock when the doors open. And I got a lot of friends here that, you know, I meet every day. And I just want to say thank you for this meeting.
Thank you very much for coming out, and we'll definitely take a look at that at Cave Creek and Sherrill. Next is Reverend Cleo Lewis, and then after him, we will have Bob Belkey, please.
Thank you, Council. I'm not used to anyone telling me I only have 3 minutes to emphasize a couple of points. If there's anyone else that's a member of the faith community, could you raise your hands? I believe that, yes. Thank you. We kind of have an interesting ministry in Sunny Slope, and one thing I really liked us being involved in this process. The city of Phoenix is a little bit different. There's nobody better. I can tell you this personally because 3 years ago, something very unique happened to my son. He was on the way home because it was time to do laundry. He was attacked and stabbed 5 times. It was in about 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday evening. His life was saved by 2 Phoenix police officers responding to the call. Plus, the fire department showed up a few minutes later. I got there and I was able to help triage him. And the reason why that's significant to me as a parent is that they had a choice. They could have called for a helicopter because John C. Lincoln was on override. And because of the influence of those firemen that took the time to triage him and said, you know what, we'll take him by would just take him over, his life was saved. They told me that he would have lost his life that night. And you know what? We have the best employees. And, sir, for me, I will pay whatever it takes to restore our employees. And it's not just in police and fire, which is critical. I've been able to develop a relationship with the commander of this precinct, and, you know, we just appreciate so much what they do. But something else happened the other day. One of my neighbors who only speaks Spanish came and got me and said there was a burglary happening next door. And she asked me to come help her. I ran outside in my thongs to see what was going on, and there was a kid involved in a burglary. We found out, we knew who he was. He was a son, he was robbing his dad's house. And, you know, we got the young man calmed down, and I was out taking pictures of him, and I asked her to call us to get the police on the way, but because of the fact she spoke Spanish and there was a miscommunication, it took 30 hours for the police to show up to take a burglary report. Now, that's no fault of the police. It's because of the fact they're just not staffed. And we have to roll back our wage concessions, but 130 officers is not going to get it. That's just not enough. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just not enough. I'm about ready to start preaching about this.
Yep. You've gone over your 3 minutes, so if you want to wrap it up,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Thank you, Councilman. But the impact of our services as a community church in this area, we do a lot in this community, but there are some city services we can't match. We trust your competent leadership. We've been impressed with you. But you know what we're going to have to do? We just can't stretch this anymore, people.
All right, Reverend, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next, we have Bob Belkey, and then after that, we have Patsy Bauer, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Bob. In addition to the boxes, you can bring your pop tops off your cans. We collect those also. But I'm here as a senior, and just to say what everybody else has said, you know, we need it. But more than that, if you close us, how are you going to save money? We still have to feed these people. You're going to transport them, expand dial ride. It's cheaper to bring the food in here and keep the people here at their own house than it is bringing in stuff from the outside. Besides the fact that we help keep the kids off the street, and I can go on and on, but everybody else has done the same thing. Just a reminder how busy we are right here in this community and how we need it. As a disabled veteran, I'd like to make a comment about the city. We all know how poor the VA system is and so forth. However, it is not the city's responsibility to house us. I'd like everybody to get the congressmen and things and make the federal government kick in the money to help do what has to be done. I know we're just taking taxes from one pocket out of the other, but it's not the city's responsibility. I'm happy to see that the city is one of the cities that's going to be doing that, but it does not fall on the taxpayers. So far as taxes, I'm against a tax increase. I happen to be a homeowner where a lot of my friends are not. But the fact is, the taxes are going up simply because of the fact that the assessments are going up. And because of the housing starting to turn around, it has been the last 2 years. I really think that the assessment going up and things is going to bring in more revenue in addition to that. And if you do, I don't think 24 cents in your response isn't a lot of money. Split that in half, and I'd go for 12%. Not that we're negotiating. Okay? But so far as the police department, everything, they're doing a good job. They need more and things. But it comes down to help the seniors again. I want people to realize we need seniors more than we need additional money to parks and recreation, like the expansion of Rosemount Park, or the soundproofing at the dog park down in downtown Phoenix we did 2 years ago. Let's bring the money back to our seniors. And thank you, gentlemen, for my time.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for your service. Next is Patsy Bauer, and then after that, Celia Stober, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Patsy Bauer. This is my senior center. Recently, I discovered one of the places our money is all going, where it shouldn't be going. I heard a man on TV, he said he was from the Treasurer's Department, and he told me, that we were paying for all of Joe Arpaio's legal fees. And we had been doing that for about 10 years. And this was a couple of months ago. At that time, it amounted to $43 million we have paid for Joe Arpaio's legal fees, and he's still breaking the law. So this man said that he thought it should be stopped. He was outraged. I'm outraged. And I've heard that we can't stop it, that there's nothing we can do about it. Well, I don't accept that. I think that anytime we have a problem, if we look hard enough, we'll find a solution. We need to stop paying Joe Arpaio's legal fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Celia Stober, and then after that, Tom Coretto, please.
My name is Celia Stober, and I'm a member of Shadow Mountain Senior Center. I feel the fire and the police department employees, along with all the city employees, made a good faith sacrifice 6 years ago. I pray that you can find it in this budget to fully restore their concessions without closing Shadow Mountain Senior Center or any of the others. While I've been sitting here listening, I have a senior tax freeze on my property. And I wonder if this could be a solution for the seniors, homeowners, if the trial budget passes. Would that be something that would be abandoned, do you know, at this point?
Nothing about our property tax would affect the state laws on senior tax freezes, so that's separate from this proposal, yeah.
Thank you very much. Tom Coretto, and then after that, Hank Bonney, please.
Good evening, everyone. I grew up in the Sunny Slope community, and I live here now, and I'm very proud to say that I'm a Phoenix firefighter with 9 years of service, 3 of which in the Sunny Slope community. So I know how important it is to have our libraries, senior centers, our pools open. This is a particular concern to me. I started my career with the city of Phoenix 20 years ago as a lifeguard. It's time to restore the concessions the city employees have made to balance the city's budget. The police and fire contributions alone have equaled $500 million for the city general fund. It's time to bring us back to 2010 pay rates. I can only speak for the fire department. I know all the other services, the city services departments are strapped right now. We are down 160 employees. That's 160 less firefighters we have on the streets to respond to any medical emergency or any fire. We are also running 40,000 more calls each year, this year than last year. Combined with inflation, each firefighter has seen a reduction in their personal spending of 18%. An 18% reduction in buying power is, we can all agree, pretty significant. I just want to thank everybody. It's time to restore the city employees' concessions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thanks for your service to the city of Phoenix. Next, Hank Bonney, and then after that, Diana Bonney, please.
Hello, my name is Hank Bonney. I am a Phoenix police officer with over 22 years of service. I have spent my entire career in patrol in the South Mountain, Central City, and Maryville precincts. I am currently a patrol sergeant in the Maryville precinct. My pay and restoration concessions are important to me, but I wanted to talk to you about something that's more important, our children. In my job, I see lots of kids, hurt kids, abused kids, dead kids, kids with parents that are not qualified to be parents. But when I see the look of faces on kids at Camp Collie, they look up at night and see the entire sky lit up with stars, or listen to them giggle and laugh as they catch crawdads in a cold mountain stream, or even share a quiet moment with them at their first campfire while their camaraderie with their parents, staff, teachers, and other kids grow, I feel the place like Camp Collie has great value. Camp Collie provides unique and positive experiences for kids that are not available any place in the city of Phoenix. It is staffed by extremely dedicated people who ensures efficient operation and provides maximum benefit for the kids. If you have not seen the place, you owe it to yourself to go and look at it. Maybe go with a class of students from my wife's school. I'm asking you to please support funding for Camp Collie, our gem on the rim. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. Diana Bonney, and then after her, Francine Masterson.
Hello, I'm Diana Bonney. Can you hear me? I'm a teacher at Orangewood School. I could teach K through 8 students. And as a teacher, I get to touch the future every single day. And when I see that future, what I want them to be are informed citizens who make decisions about our land, about our water use, about all the issues that we'll face that'll be far beyond us. And so what I ask you is, as my husband said, Camp Collie, there's so many things that the kids see and do that you can't get in any other way. So as a teacher, we do things in the books. And if you're looking at pine cones and forest health, and this is a really fascinating way to find out about pine cones, would you agree? Or, I'll leave that for you. Or you could actually see a pine cone and look at it and think about how that comes in. And so I would encourage you all. The money that goes into Camp Collie, the students that we have, the children that we have, will repay that many times over in the future with their, again, making informed decisions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Francine Masterson, and then after Francine, we'll have Patricia Clark.
Good evening. My name is Francine Masterson, and I'm from Shadow Mountain Senior Center. And Philip is back there. He does a tremendous job in our center, and we've seen many changes and very enthusiastic group that we have there. So that's why I'm here to talk about senior centers. So I was on the internet, and at Arizona Central, there was a quote from Gloria Hurtado, stated that centers that will be closing, seniors will be offered free transportation to the next closest center that remains open. So how long will the transportation be free is the question, because they're on limited income. And the second one, I saw an article from Money US News, and the article about Scottsdale, Arizona State's Scottsdale increase of seniors was 20% compared to the national average of 13%. So how is the city council preparing for the continuing increase of seniors joining the senior centers? So if we have more seniors, but you want to close the senior centers, how are you going to resolve that? So those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Patricia Clark, who is with Chrysalis, wonderful organization here in our community. And then after Patricia, Vaughn Magnan.
Hi, I'm sitting here and watching all this, and I feel everybody's pain. I would not want to be on either side of this. My name is Patricia. I work at Chrysalis, which is a domestic abuse organization, and we've been in the Sunny Slope area for 35 years, and we would be lost without the city of Phoenix, not just from the employees, from fire, from police, all the way around. And I'm also a City of Phoenix resident, and for me, if we can raise our real estate tax, property tax, I think that's definitely a way to help adjust this budget. All of us can be affected, but if we can minimize it and we don't have to come back here every year, every 2 years, or every 3 years, this in and of itself is also expensive. So anything that we can do to help mitigate that is better. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Vaughn Magnan, and then after Vaughn, we have Lance Magnan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vaughn Magnan, and I was born and raised. I continue to reside and work in the city of Phoenix. I'm going to wear 2 hats this evening. One as a father, and another one as someone who works for one of the largest youth development agencies in the city of Phoenix, who serves over 2,000 kids daily in the city limits. What I'd like to share with you tonight is my experiences with Camp Collie, which Hank Bonney so eloquently described to you a few minutes ago. As a father, I had an opportunity a few years ago to accompany my wife and our youngest son up to Camp Collie, and that was a wonderful experience for me. Primarily because I had an opportunity to learn new things and to take risks. I'm in my mid-40s, and I got to do things for the first time in my life that I never got to do before, and I served in the Marines for 6 years, so to get to do new things is pretty cool. I got to kayak, got to shoot bow and arrow, got to mountain bike, and all this was done under the kind, care, and compassionate workers at Staff Camp Collie. And I got to do those things with my kid. Not a lot of parents get to do that anymore, so that was truly amazing. And I think one of my most favorite parts about Camp Collie is these things we all carry around, they don't work. So you have to get in touch with nature, and Camp Collie facilitates that. The other hat that I wear this evening in representing the children of the greater Metro Phoenix area, these are the kids that Hank spoke about, the kids who do not get these opportunities. How many of you can remember the first time you sat around a campfire at night? Or you saw a forest with green trees? We don't see a whole lot of that in Phoenix, right? I have seen countless teenagers go up to Camp Collie, and it is amazing to see their faces when they see that environment for the very first time. They change. These kids are tough kids living in tough communities, and I get a chance to see them transform into children who want to play outdoors, care about their environment, and care about others. So the $127,000 maintenance support that the city currently provides Camp Collie may sound like a lot of money. It's really not. It's a very small investment that the city makes to care for that wonderful gem that's on the rim. And without the continued investment, if it has to be absorbed by others, how would people like my child or the kids in this city be able to have that wonderful experience? So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Next is Lance Magnan, and then, if time allows, Dana Saylor. So I'll let Dana decide whether she would like to speak.
Hi, my name's Lance. I've gone to Orangewood School where Dr. Bonney, or Diana Bonney, works at, and for going on 3 years now, we've always gone up to Camp Collie. And myself, I've gone to Camp Collie 4 years, and I've learned so many things. How to boat safely, how to clear out a forest, and how to sleep warm in a freezing forest. But if this camp closes, all those kids their first time going to a campfire, or their first time looking up a sea of stars, that won't happen. It just won't. It won't exist anymore. And I just don't want this for myself, but I want it for every other grade, for every other kid that is going to go through my school, or through anybody for that matter. Well, thanks.
Thank you, Lance. Great job. Next, we have Dana Saylor. If Dana would like to speak, we'd love to have you. And then Dave Stubenrock after that. Or no, I'm sorry. I will read his comments, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have the honor to serve on the Phoenix Arts and Culture Commission, so I'm here tonight representing the commission. And I can't read with my glasses, and I can't read without them, so give me a shot here. First, I'd like to say we commissioners support the city manager's trial budget recommendation of an increase in revenue to create a surplus rather than a deficit. We support the city manager's proposal to partially restore previously made cuts to the Arts and Cultures Grants Program in the amount of $50,000. Our goal is to reach $1 per capita of funding, or $1.5 million in grants awarded to the Phoenix Arts and Culture Organization. This is after school programs, intervention programs, college readiness programs. We have, our activities generate more than $30 million in economic value to our community. That's a huge amount of money that comes from these programs. The annual cost to preserve and restore our 180 public artworks throughout Phoenix is approximately $100,000. However, only $49,000 is currently allocated from the general fund for maintenance of public art. We support an increase in maintenance funding. The arts are fundamental to our humanity. They inspire us, they foster creativity, collaboration, and bring beauty to our lives. Arts and culture help us to express our values, build bridges between all of our cultures and our community, and bring us together regardless of our differences. And on a side note, our economic impact is that we create nearly 10,000 jobs in our community in Phoenix alone. So thank you very much for your consideration.
And thank you very much for your service on the Arts Commission. We appreciate it. Next, we have Dave Steuben-Rock, who's did not wish to speak, but I'd like to read his comment into the record. I do not support the current budget and would like the council to support public safety with full restoration of previous pay and benefit cuts. Next, we have Jeff Spielman, and then after Jeff Spielman, Lucille Lecon. Jeff, come on down.
Thank you, Councilman. There's not a whole lot more that I can say about Camp Collie that you haven't already heard from kids, police officer, and teachers that this program touches. But I do want to tell you just briefly about how this program happens, because it is a pretty unique arrangement and partnership between the Camp Collie Foundation, the Arizona Parks and Recreation Fellowship, and the City of Phoenix. Camp Collie manifests the dream of Jim Collie, who was the revered late director of the Phoenix Parks and Rec Department, to help at-risk young people through supervised wilderness experiences learn to make good decisions, develop self-confidence and resilience, and build healthy relationships. The camp also offers work experience for disconnected older teens to support their growth into responsible employed adults through ACYR and the Arizona at Work program. The Camp Collie Foundation was established at the request of the city to raise money to support capital development and operations. The Arizona Parks and Recreation Fellowship manages the camp. The city maintains the property, which we trust it will do in the new fiscal year. Now, since the camp opened in 2000, the Camp Collie Foundation has provided more than $880,000 to help serve more than 4,800 youth. In 2015, the camp hosted 850 campers. We are also exceptionally proud of the Kathleen Kilfoyle Children of Fallen Officers Camp, where kids whose parents have given the ultimate sacrifice come to heal through the wonders of nature and have a chance just to be kids. In 2005, journalist Richard Louv published a book called Last Child in the Woods. That book started a movement across the country to reconnect kids with nature. But long before Louv ever thought about writing this book, Jim Collie knew about the impact that nature has on kids, and that is why he fought so hard for the city to have this camp. This dream is being kept alive through the hard work of the Camp Collie Foundation and the Arizona Parks and Recreation Fellowship that operate the camp program at no cost to the city. We respectfully request that you honor your commitment to fund the small maintenance budget for the camp as part of your agreement with our nonprofit foundations. We support option one. It's a small price to pay to maintain our city services. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Lucille, and then after Lucille, Tobiah Adams, please.
I have been coming here 7 years. I came, I weighed almost 200 pounds. I had just survived breast cancer, liver cancer, and colon cancer. And I came here because I had no friends. My husband had just died. I was very lonely. And I came here because I was given 4 months to live 7 years ago. I started walking in the gym. We need that gym. You people might think it's just for exercise. I no longer have, I walking at that gym, I no longer have diabetes. I no longer have high blood pressure, no cholesterol. Everything is perfect. They tell me, do not quit walking. I have to walk here. I can't go to the mall. I'm an old lady. The kids will pick on me, will push me. I am 81 years old, and I walk 2 miles every day. Every day. And I am in perfect health. And every year I hear we might close. You can't close us down. We need it here.
Thank you, and congratulations, Lucille. Councilman Valenzuela leads our Fit Phoenix efforts, and I think he's going to want to feature you in a video later. Thank you so much. Tobiah Adams, and then Philip Weiser, please.
Hello, I'm Tobiah Adams. I'm a parent as well as a volunteer in the neighborhood. These kids need these programs because we make the cops' jobs easier by finding something for the kids to do. They do need their services as well. Everything, if we're gonna do this, we need to do it as a whole. And a couple of cents is just a small payment on a big investment later on in the future. So thank you, and I hope you support the first.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Philip Weiser, and then Maritza Lopez, please.
Thank you. My name is Philip Weiser. I'm a Phoenix native, born and raised here. My folks still live less than 2 miles away from here. Over 40 years, they've lived in that home. I'm also a Phoenix resident, a homeowner. Also been teaching almost 20 years in the district, right here, Washington Elementary School District. Over 20 years in the United States Air Force and Air Force Reserve. I'm a parent. I'm a youth volunteer for the last 15 years or so here at the Rec Center, participating in the adult programs here at the Rec Center and the other rec centers in the city of Phoenix, including Buff, Washington Activity Center, this one, and many others. Over the years, I've been very active in the city of Phoenix. As you can see by the shirt, I'm here primarily Camp Collie, but we've heard a lot about Camp Collie. I just want to talk about that all our youth, adults, and seniors, and veterans, they need a safe environment, a safe place, especially during the summer when school's out. And seeing in the proposed budget, closing 3/4 of the rec centers is just unacceptable. When it's the hottest and they're at their most vulnerable, that's when we need these facilities. Just recently, I had a youth basketball team at my Title I school I work at. We needed someplace to go on Saturday, Martin Luther King weekend, volunteered my time, took them to a tournament. We had a couple hours between. Didn't hesitate. I came down here. I've known the director here at the rec center for years. He said, bring your kids down here. It's someplace to be that's safe. Camp Collie, if you looked at the budgeting, it's less than 0.01% of the total expenditures, $127,000. It's a very small amount. Most of that money that they use is nonprofit. That's just the maintenance operations. That's a place that needs to be open, not just for our kids, but our kids' kids. And if we relinquish that, I don't think it'll be around. And it just recently reopened. I had the privilege to bring some kids up there and volunteer to escort them. And the students up there, obviously we heard some of this, the positive social interactions, physical activity. They learn about forest restoration, conservation of the watershed. It's an experience you cannot get here in Phoenix, up at the rim. And the question isn't, as a homeowner and a taxpayer, the question isn't how we can afford a small property tax increase, but more importantly, how can we afford not to support public safety, arts, parks and rec, and just the community in general. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your service and the work you do in the Washington Elementary School District. Ms. Lopez, And then after that, we have Chris Holgum. Ms. Lopez.
Hello, I'm Maritza Lopez, and last year I got to go to Camp Collie, and hopefully I'm going again this year. But my father passed away recently, and my mom isn't really an outdoorsy one. So Camp Collie provided me with an experience I never would have gotten, and maybe if I did, it would be for a very short time. And just if this camp closes, knowing that there are other kids out there like me that won't get to have that experience, that would be heartbreaking, because I know that I loved when I went there just to see all the stars and archery, mountain biking, even though I suffered a mild face injury. It was all really fun. So I just hope that this camp doesn't close so other kids can have the opportunity me and other kids got.
Great job. Thanks for coming out. Chris, and then we have Michelle Goings after. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Chris. I work here at the Sunny Slope Senior Center. I've been here for a year, and before that, I had nowhere to go to find a job because of Social Security and benefits that I can't do, and so I came here, and recently I just heard about the budget thing, and it's really upsetting because I really like the seniors. I mean, it opened the big doors for me as a young guy pursuing my big dreams, and, you know, like, during lunchtime, I provide them with the milk and the ice cream, and if I can't do that anymore, I don't know what to do. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for what you do for our seniors. Michelle, and then after that, we have Elin Weiser.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Goings, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Friends of Phoenix Public Art. We support the city manager's trial budget recommendation of an increase in revenue as a long-term solution to the city's budget problems. We support the manager's proposal to partially restore previously made cuts to the Arts and Culture Grants Program in the amount of $50,000. We do not support cuts to cultural facilities management and property management services, which will negatively impact operations at the Phoenix Art Museum, the Phoenix Theater, and Children's Museum of Arizona. Although not in lieu of the additions to the grants program or any cuts to cultural facilities, we also support an increase in maintenance for public art. The annual costs to preserve and restore our 180 public art works throughout Phoenix is approximately $100,000. However, only $49,000 is currently allocated from the general fund for maintenance of public art. An increase in maintenance funding is critical to make sure the public art we build continues to work and look good well into the future. Phoenix public art projects like Artist Design shade structures along Roosevelt Street downtown, transit stations like Desert Sky, and the beautiful terrazzo floors at Phoenix SkyTrain enhance the beauty of our city. Public art projects are out in the open for all of our community to enjoy. The City of Phoenix has created over 180 public art installations in communities throughout the city over the past 30 years. Many public arts projects are integrated right into the city's infrastructure, bridges, buildings, street, and canalscapes. Most of the work on projects like these is done by talented teams from our local construction trades, concrete workers, masons, electricians, painters, steel workers, and more. Over the past decade, more than 1,600 of these construction workers right here in Arizona have helped to build public art projects throughout Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. We have Mr. Weiser and then Devin Say after him.
Hi, I'm Alon Weiser, and I am here speaking so that we don't close Camp Collie. And I think the reason why is because you don't really get an opportunity like this in Phoenix, in that most kids don't get to have the opportunity. And I'm afraid of heights, and we got to climb up, I'm pretty sure, a 100-foot fire tower, and that's a pretty cool opportunity. I think other kids should be able to get that opportunity just as I did, and that's just one of the things I learned.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Devin?
Hi, I'm Wake Brown. I came up with him, and today I would like to talk about one of my personal experiences from Camp Collie, and it's a really unique experience to get to go out in the wilderness and get to do fishing, get to do climb up the fire tower, as you said. And one of my favorite experiences from Camp Collie was getting to go crawdad fishing, and we learned a lot about the environment there and how a lot of the fish there and their ecosystem, how that works, and how that crawdads weren't originally supposed to be in that river, and they're eating up a lot of the wildlife, so it's hurting the environment. And so we got to go crawdad fish catching, and it was really fun, and I just wanted to share one of my experiences with Camp Collie.
Thank you so much. Next is Devin. Thanks for coming.
Hello, I'm Devin C., and I would like to talk to you about Camp Collie. At Camp Collie, we got to go crawdad fishing. We got to climb up a fire tower. We got to learn how people use a certain tool to track and find the exact coordinates of fires so the firefighters can find it. We got to sleep on cots inside of a tent. We got to we found fossils up by the Mogollon Rim, and I just wanted to tell you why Camp Collie should not be cut.
Thank you. Great job. Next is Tiffany Say, and then after that, Councilman Craig Tripkin. And Councilman Valenzuela and I want to know if we can go to Camp Collie this summer, right? Good evening.
Hi, my name is Tiffany C. Devin is my son. I don't think I need to say much about Camp Collie. Obviously, the kids have great experiences about it at Camp Collie. When we got back, we actually went to the Mogollon Rim a couple of weeks after his experience at Camp Collie, and he was pointing out all the different kinds of trees. He was explaining all of the things that he had seen. The kids, I'm also a teacher at Orangewood Elementary School, so I was able to hear all the stories and the experiences that the kids had. So you're just hearing a small cut of what their experiences were, and we're really hoping that Camp Collie is not cut and that you guys continue to fund them.
Thank you so much. Next, Craig Tripkin, and then Regina Nixon.
Thank you. I'm here to speak about homelessness. If you don't accept option one of the budget, we will be cutting homeless services by $52,000 at our regional homeless shelter downtown. We serve over 4,700 unduplicated people in a year, 62% of whom stay under 21 days. If we have to absorb yet another cut, and we've been cut by 20% since 2008, if we have to absorb yet another cut, we will probably not be able to provide services to 325 people. Now, we won't close our door, but we'll provide fewer services, which means that 3-week stay that I mentioned will get longer. And that means that there will be that many more people on the street. And I think it doesn't take a lot. Do you have a problem in Sunny Slope with homelessness? Yes? It doesn't take a lot to say that while the city has put a lot of effort into solving homelessness, we need to redouble our efforts and not cut what we've already put into it. The homeless services are homeless people cost us in police calls, they cost us in fire department calls, they cost us in crime, they cost us in so many ways, emergency room visits, and that cost is under a pay me now, pay me later kind of thing. And I hope you will not. I hope you'll support the city manager's budget and not cut back homeless services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Tripkin, for your advocacy on behalf of homeless in our community. Before Regina Nixon goes, I have a card here. Tim Knob does not want to speak, but his comment is to restore full restorations to Phoenix employees' compensation benefits, raise property taxes. Thank you for your comment. Ms. Nixon?
Good evening. My name is Regina Nixon, and I'm the director for the Phoenix Conservatory of Music. I also sit on the Phoenix Arts Commission. And I would just like to talk about arts tonight in a little bit different way than we've heard from my colleagues before. Our arts organization is in District 1. We're not in District 5 or District 3 located, but we provide services to the people who are in District 5 and District 3. And if you look around the room, you see art through the art projects, poetry readings, and art enhances our quality of life on a day-to-day basis. Personally, I've taught guitar classes right down the hallway. I have taught early childhood classes for 6 months old all the way up through 5 years old, right down the hallway. I've done performances on this stage for the kids in this community center. I've done programs at Adam Diaz Senior Center. I've done programs at Buffs Senior Center. I've done programs in a lot of different places. And how are we able to do this is by arts and culture grants, right? We can't do it alone. The arts provide so many services and so much enrichment to overall quality of our life. We think about the arts kind of being this esoteric thing that we don't touch, but every single one of us are touched by the arts in our daily life, whether it's a good book or a beautiful quilt or a child's laughter as they experience an instrument for the first time. So as an arts and culture community, we support the trial budget and an increase with property taxes to create a surplus rather than a deficit in next year's budget. We support the proposal to reinstate the $50,000 that would bring the Office of Arts and Culture grant program up to $730,000. And again, our goal is to eventually reach that $1 per capita that we so desperately need in this city. We have major concerns about cuts to our cultural facilities management and property management services, which negatively impact the operations of our cornerstones, the Art Museum, the theater, and the Children's Museum of Arizona. This is big stuff, and all of those organizations, just like mine, reach out into the community and serve the valley, not just in their one little space, but all over. And furthermore, you heard about those 180 pieces of public art, right? How about the ones that are right out on 7th Street, right here, that I think got hit by a car, like maybe last year sometime, right? That restoration money goes to make sure that those pieces of art are restored and safe for our community. So we would support an increase in that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your service on the Arts Commission. Next is Norma Holdcraft, and then after Norma is Jasmine Hayes. Thanks for being here this evening.
I'm Norma Holdcraft. I was born in Sunny Slope, but I don't live here, but I live up the hill, and I go to Shadow Mountain. I was so saddened when Philip told us that they might close. That you have to close any of them is just awful. I love the trips that I've got to go on that I never when I was working, I didn't have a chance to do it. And then I'm not as good a fit as the lady over there that's 81. I'm 80, but but I like the chair volleyball and the sit-down exercise. And also, last year, the sit-down yoga. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, sirs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out. So we have Jasmine Hayes, and then after Jasmine, we have Deanna Feliciano, please.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Hayes. I work as a GIS professional, and I'm an urban planner by degree. Just like everyone was saying, there's a trend of the most vulnerable people as the young adults or the older adults, and the youth being put at risk. And a big problem that I see is food deserts, that it has not been addressed. I gave you all a map that I have created myself. They are all the current grocery stores that we have in the city of Phoenix. And you see a big old gap right there where it's red. That's all the low-income area where there is no access to a grocery store or a supermarket. So the USDA defines a food desert as not having access by low-income residents within a mile. So each grocery store has a buffer of a mile, but that's different from a walking mile or a bus mile or a bike mile. So even though that might seem like, oh, it's not that much gap, but traveling there is a lot harder, and especially for our older adults, not our senior citizens. So, and then I made a point that all of the white points are for cultural specific grocery stores. So that even decreases the chances of our residents having access to grocery stores because they may not eat that type of food. So if I eliminated those white points, the likelihood of our residents having access to grocery stores and supermarkets where they can find food is very slim to none. So again, we have to stop putting the people that are most vulnerable at risk. And we have to address the food desert issue that we have. I did read the general plan because I wanted to see what it specifically said. And it said, healthy food systems is an investment into infrastructure to help achieve the city's goals. But yet these food deserts have been here for a long period of time. And also the general plan lists codes as a tool for policies by saying adopt zoning, land use guidelines, and other policies that incentivize grocery stores, farmers markets, community gardens, and food trucks to locate in underserved communities. Yet, most of the time when our older citizens are able to eat is when they come to these senior centers, and our youth only eat when they go to camp, and that's a problem. If your mom and dad are at home all day and you come home from school and you can't cook a meal, what are you going to do? And so that then translates directly to crime. So I do agree with the investment, the strong investment into public safety, but I also have a certification from the World Bank Group in risk management for development. And time again, it has proven that globally, if you invest more into preventative action, you spend less later trying to mitigate the effects that lack of food and crime have. So if we address these food desert issues, we can erase a lot of those issues.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that. And those of us in this community are very thankful for Walmart recently opening the neighborhood market, which helped address the food desert that we had here in Sunny Slope. Deanna Feliciano, and then we have Ken and Diane Dunn. My apologies. Deanna Feliciano had a comment. She does not want to speak. And her comment is, this community center is an asset to this community for seniors and children. Even the programs, Zumba, etc., keep it open. Thank you. So now we have Ken and Diane Dunn. And then next we have Suzanne Thran, please.
Thank you guys for coming all out, especially the ones with the yellow shirts. Especially the ones with the yellow shirts. Yeah, I'm a senior. I hate to say that, but I'm a senior, and I'm a president of the on-site council. I'm over you guys now. No, and President, and I wanted to say that our idea with these shirts, I was talking to Daniel about it. Mr. Gates, you're going to get a free one. You'll get a free shirt now.
No, we
Everybody
have-
else has to pay for it.
I'll pay for mine gladly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm going to plug, can I plug them now? It's $8 a shirt and stuff, and we still have some more. But if you read on the back, this is what it says. That's laugh, learn, and create. And this is what we do over here and stuff. I enjoyed everybody here and doing all this. We interact with the Sunny Slope kids, too. I liked Daniel's event about when they were out on 2 weeks out of spring break or winter break, whatever it's called. We did a lot of stuff like making ice cream, a lot of different activities. And with the gym, I learned a lot of people. I went over there and talked to a lot of people over there, and I do it too because I have heart trouble and diabetes and stuff. So if they close that down, I don't know where to go on that either, but we enjoy it over here. I enjoy it. My wife enjoys it. We have fun a lot, so keep them open.
Thank you. Diane?
I'm too short. I found out I shrunk 5 feet instead of 5'1". Oh, well. My name is Diane Dunn. I've been here since 1982. Oh, my God. And I want to thank Daniel and Sierra and Deborah and everybody here. I'm a member of Sunny Slope Senior Center. I want to thank everybody here for helping me keep my sanity, which is my saying I say all the time. And I did have breast cancer last year. I ended with breast cancer. I have a high risk of osteoporosis. And this place has kept me going, has kept my mind, my sanity as much as I can. And it kept me going. And I really thank everybody for just keeping me sane. and thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. And thank you, seniors. And please, please, please keep this open because I don't know what I'd do without this place. Thank you.
Thank you. We hear you loud and clear. Suzanne, and then we have Kathy Stillman, please.
What do you call it?
Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Each time that we start the budget project, I have a sense that I've just entered the fear farm because folks are always fearful of losing of what is the most important to them. My husband and I are in favor and willing to increase our taxes on our home, but I would like to also ask what would be the increase on the real estate development area of the city of Phoenix?
So the numbers we've given on the property tax are for a typical single-family home in Phoenix, the average, and that's $51 a year or $4.25 a month for a residence.
Yes.
It's proportional for whatever the value is. So that the typical single-family home is probably about a $240,000 value.
No.
So that's the average single-family residential value that we're calculating the $50 on.
Okay.
So if the home
selling
is more,
tomorrow. No.
if the home is more, then it's more than $50, or the property. If the property is less, then it's less than $50.
I don't care how much the tax is. I want to know how much more is the real estate development folks who come here to work, who are building new buildings, new houses, how much more are they asked to pay? In tax, in city tax.
Well, the property tax applies to real estate development, to vacant land, to homes, to commercial buildings. It applies to all of
Everybody
us.
gets a raise or gets a jack up.
Yes, correct.
All right. Thank you. That's great. That's great.
Just so you know that, I didn't count that, the answer to the question against your time.
Thank you very much,
You bet.
Councilman Gates. We are also in favor of the full restoration of all of the concessions given to the police department, the fire department, the city of Phoenix employees. We're very blessed. Those of us who weren't born here are very blessed to have made the choice to live here. And we did that on purpose. My husband and I have lived here for almost 40 years, and very proud to say that we live in Maryvale. I would like to just mention a little something that was discussed last night at our Block Watch meeting. There were about, I don't know, 30 or so, 35 or more people. Anyhow, our school library was full. And there were some questions that were asked. Like, one, how many of you have ridden the light rail? Well, my husband and 2 other people. And then they said, well, how many paid to ride the light rail? My husband and 2 other people. But our experience getting on at 19th Avenue and going downtown, it's been my husband, myself, and our friend Carol who bought tickets. We have just recently had people on the train for security. However, they got off at 7th. So they didn't make it all the way down, and we didn't see any tickets in the. I'm not saying I don't like the light rail. I'm saying when you invest, if you can't recoup, maybe we shouldn't move it another inch until we recoup a little bit. We've made a lot of promises to a lot of people in our city. We've seen an increase in transportation out Camelback, and we were promised light rail. Councilman Valenzuela will talk about that later on, okay? Homelessness.
You're up to your 3 minutes, so if you can wrap it up.
I'm going to go really fast. Homeless, it's not, I'm grateful for everything that you do for our veterans, but the majority that I've met and talked to and given water to aren't veterans. But they do come along with the snowbirds because it's warmer, but they're setting up house in shelters. So beyond veterans.
And
lastly, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Kathy Stillman, and then we have Jim Bolger.
I misunderstood the video because I thought it said you were hiring 260 police officers this year. That is not right, is it? You're not hiring 260 police officers this year. It's not in that book. Can't find it. Okay, but if you hire 260 police officers this year, we're down 800. We're going to be down another 120 through the program. We're not making enough progress to get back where we are. I don't think a person that flies an airplane as a policeman should be out on the street in a police car, because then we don't have him up there in the airplane protecting our officers. I think that the money that y'all took from everybody in the city employees, they gave it. They need to get that money back. That's money that we promised them. They gave it to us in a crisis. We owe them that money. We need to hire more fire officers. We're down 82 fire officers. We can't have, we're getting older people, which is wonderful. I love older people. My mom and dad are 82. They live with me. When I call the fire department, I want a fire officer to come and take care of them because I'm only calling them when one of them is in cardiac arrest. I can't deal with it. We don't have enough police officers, we don't have enough fire officers, and that should be our first and main concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jim Bolger, and then the final speaker card is for Denise Viner, please.
Hi there. I am a City of Phoenix employee, 27 years. I have been, it's a great place to work for, except for the last 6 years. I have a second job now. I work at Home Depot. I spend 25 to 30 hours there, plus the 40 at the city. I'd like to get our concessions back so I can be whole again. I can be with my family at night instead of at a second job. It did bring me close to here, though. On Easter weekend, Home Depot did an event with the city of Phoenix here. So I did spend some time with the community center. So we gave that concessions in good faith to the city. They asked for it. They said we would get it back every 2 years. When it's time to negotiate, it seems like they move their money and we have no money. They play around with it. They put the bar too high for set our goals to get our concessions back. They push it off another 2 years. We hope to get it back. That comes and goes. So all I'm asking for is raise the property taxes if that's the way to go, to get the money, to give us what we need and just make us whole again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Denise? You get the last word.
Wow, thank you. My name is Denise Viner. I think I saw you on Tuesday. I spoke at Levine, and I think I'm gonna be your shadow because I am here to speak on behalf of the youth program. I used to own a dance studio over here on 19th Avenue in Peoria. Unfortunately, I have to shut it down because I have so many young kids and adults coming to take my class, and because I have a big heart, I couldn't charge them. So obviously, if I don't charge, I can't pay the rent. So I decided, I started to use the youth center right here on 17th Avenue in Peoria, and they only worked out maybe for about 6 months because the city and the payment and the cut and the payment was not available. I have hundreds of family, hundreds of kids that are waiting for me to come back. So I'm asking you to please invest on these young children. The reason why I am a dance instructor, I teach Zumba for the adults, I teach Latin dance, and then I also do summer programs for these children. I myself decided to work with the kids because I am from the Dominican Republic, came to the United States at the age of 12. I went to New York City. It was a cultural shock for me. I felt left out. I didn't feel like I could fit in. I often, living in the Bronx, looking down the window, it crossed my mind to jump off the window because I just didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't speak the language. Music saved my life. And because music saved my life, dancing and art, I can relate to a lot of these children. On my way here, I do medical transportation. I picked up a young client, 15 years old. I picked him up from therapy. She told me that she tried to commit suicide herself. And I told her about my dance program. She was thrilled. I gave her my business card. She wants to take my lessons, but I don't have a place to teach these lessons. I also I also support the senior center. I think it's very important for us to work together. I want to become that bridge that connect the young and the older, because I think I met a young lady. She was like 80-something years old. I was sitting at a restaurant by myself waiting for my husband to join me for lunch, and she asked me, may I please sit with you? There was plenty of seating available, but she decided that she wanted to sit with me. I said, sure. So then, and I can tell that she was feeling lonely. She has no children here. Her husband died, but she's looking for company. A lot of these young folks here in yellow, they need the center. And I think that investing in the youth and investing in the older community is very important, because I think that allowing the youth to work with you, it will teach them to respect. A lot of these young kids are suffering. They're going through a lot of things that we as an adult, we have no time to listen. And I want to become that bridge to give them a better future. So please invest in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Thanks for what you're doing in our community. But unfortunately for you, you didn't get the last word. But fortunately for us, we have John Dean.
Hi, good evening. My name's John Dean. I'm a Phoenix Fire captain, and I've worked all throughout the city. And what I see in this room are working people. I mean, people that work hard, blue-collar folks like myself. And the reason why that's important is I went to another city council meeting just this week. The city manager was there, and what I'm hearing across the board is restoration of wages, increase of taxes. I mean, we're working people. We talked about the concessions that city employees took is 4.2%, but it's a lot more than that. If you're a City of Phoenix employee, you're adding more into your retirements. we're 4% more, okay? So that's not 4.2, that's 8.2. And then we continuously see increases in our healthcare costs and diminishment of benefits. We're well over 10%. You know, what we're asking, and I'm thankful to listen to this group here. I use the parks, we use community centers, all of it's valuable. What I would ask the City Council, Mr. Gates, Mr. Valenzuela, is not only to support the city manager's his budget as far as increase, but look about restoring more down the road. I'm originally from back east, and I can tell you, I pay a quarter here what I would pay back in upstate New York. I'm not talking New York City. I'm talking about a small rural area. A quarter of what I would pay there. So I think that what we need to do is not only think about this year, but where are we going in the next few years? How do we get, from our leadership, how do we start looking at ways of restoring some of the stuff, not just concessions for pay, but also the senior centers, the pools, the things that makes the communities here that we want to live in. And that's really what I would challenge the City Council with. I think every employee in here is willing to do their part. I think every citizen is willing to do their part. But I think it's going to. But I think when they have to vote on this down the road, and God bless her, I listened to Greta the other night, and she said, "Hey, we want these things back for our communities." And I would ask you guys, I would challenge you to find ways of doing that. And I know it's, you know, if it's a little bit more each year until we get there, I think everyone in this room is willing to pay for that. So I thank you guys for your time. I thank you for what you do, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your service to the city of Phoenix. And with that, we have no further speaker cards. Thank you so much to everyone who came out. Great input. We were all taking a lot of notes here and really appreciate it. And please stay tuned as this process moves forward. Come down to the city council meetings and give us your further thoughts as we move forward. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great evening.
You have been watching a community budget hearing held recently in Phoenix. For questions, comments, or ideas, please visit phoenix.gov or call 602-262-4800. You can also send feedback through social media by using #PhoenixBudget. This video can also be seen online at phoenix.gov/PHXTV or youtube.com/City of Phoenix AZ.